Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. As you can see, we're in the festive spirit here on this channel. Why? Because we've got a beautiful Christmas present coming up. It's the day of reckoning. We're going to break down some of those fights. Let's talk technically. Let's get into them. First and foremost, Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker. A lot of people feel as though Deontay Wilder could be on the end of an upset here. It's the fight that most people seem to be voting for as the potential banana skin. So what are the chances of that happening? Well, first and foremost, Deontay Wilder gets an awful lot of criticism, and a lot of it is unwarranted. They say he's technically deficient. Nowadays, you've even got people that seem to be questioning his power. Who's he for is what people tend to say. Listen, when it comes to power, your chin is not necessarily correlated with your level. Guys like Chavallo or Marius Vac, some amazing chins, they're not guys that you would ever say are elite level fighters. By the same token, you've got guys like Amir Khan, Vladimir Klitschko, Julian Jackson, world-class fighters who are vulnerable. So it's not a case of who did he knock out. In other words, if you go and knock out Vladimir Klitschko, does that suddenly count as this great knockout? Or are you going to turn around and say, well, we've seen him be vulnerable in the past? The fact of the matter is, when Wilder touches people, they go to sleep. And when you look at common opponents with guys that we know are punchers, guys like Anthony Joshua, you look at Dominic Brazil, you look at Robert Helenius, look at the difference in the treatment they got between Wilder and AJ. Wilder's power's for real. However, he predominantly has what you would call long power. It is the power that comes at the full extension of the rotation of the punch. He's not a guy that's going to throw short uppercuts, short hooks, and take you out with short shots like a George Foreman, or an Alexander Povetkin, or Mike Tyson. That's a different type of power. Now, those same guys do not have the long power. Maybe George does, but the others didn't really have the long power of Deontay Wilder, right? It's different. And even George Foreman, although it was a straight shots, he would tend to have his feet beneath him. Wilder has a lot of coverage. He'll be on one side of the ring and he'll take this deep step jab and he'll create a lot of torque as he turns with that right hand, which he releases from around the chest area, and he can clean your lights out, even when you got your guard up. It's almost like a baseball pitcher, because he's releasing that power, like I said, via torque, because he's got very skinny legs. He's not producing power from the ground up. It's all to do with the speed and the snap. And so what's happened in the past of Deontay Wilder, guys have thought to themselves, right, if I can get right up on his chest, I can potentially stop that full rotation. Guys like Otto had a lot of success there. Tyson Fury, in the third fight, when his feet didn't look as fast as they had in the past, he decided to get right up close on Deontay Wilder's chest, and he nearly came unstuck. He did get caught on a couple of occasions and he went down. But the fact of the matter is, he understood that Deontay Wilder's most dangerous shots come when they're released long. So in the second fight, the way Fury would deal with it when he still had his legs is to walk him down behind long-range punches rather than short-range punches. And when he would see Deontay load up with that right hand, when he'd step in with that jab, what Fury would do is take a step back with a stiff arm defense, and that right hand would be cut off. The trajectory of it, because he's throwing it with a slight loop from his chest, would be cut off from that long arm. And so he was able to deal with him like that. The point is, regardless of whether it was the second fight behind long range shots and taking half a step back behind a stiff arm defense, or whether it was trying to come in close and smother before the full rotation in the third fight, the difference between those two and the first is that he wasn't concentrating on moving back consistently. He wanted to be pushing Wilder back. He wanted to be on the front foot. And that is really the blueprint, I believe, to stopping Deontay Wilder. And even guys like Luis Ortiz, who had a lot of success against Deontay, he was constantly moving to Deontay's left, trying to maximize the gap between himself and the right hand and trying to come in behind that shoulder of Deontay Wilder's. So he's trying to make it so that he can see the right hand coming. But when he would enter the pocket against Wilder and his feet would be a little bit too slow, that's when you gave him the opportunity to release. And in the second fight, I promise you, a few seconds before Wilder threw the right hand, I knew he was about to knock him out, because the entry point of Luis Ortiz was so slow as he centered up. He's coming through the center line and he starts to get slow in his entry. And I'm thinking he's done. He's walking onto a shot here. And that's the problem you face when you're fighting Deontay Wilder. You cannot relax for a single moment. So what chance does Joseph Parker have? If you're talking about Deontay Wilder and where he's currently at, he's boxed just one round in the last 2 years. That's a real potential problem, because a lot of Wilder's game relies on timing. You see, a lot of people talk about Deontay Wilder as though he's this useless technical fighter. All he's got is one right hand. Paul Malignaggi famously says, yeah, okay, people call him a one-trick pony, but it's one hell of a trick. The truth is he's beyond just a long right hand. He's also got a lovely left hook. He's got a brilliant jab as well. People undermine and underrate these things about Deontay. Now, he does have very flat feet. And from a technical perspective, his game is a little bit all over the place. But if you go and look at somebody like the great Bob Foster, one of the best light heavyweights of all time, and you watch highlights of him, you could easily be watching Deontay Wilder. The fact of the matter is, a guy like Wilder uses his technical unorthodoxy to his advantage. When you hurt an opponent, what that opponent tends to do, because they've had it drilled into them, is to go into a certain defensive mode, which is typical. And that is that most fighters will seek to protect the chin and the temples and the lines coming down from the temple down to the chin, because those are the areas where you can really be discombobulated and hurt. What do? They tuck their chin and they put up a high guard by the temples and they try and hide low, offering you nothing but the forehead. They're covered on each side. So if I throw a hook, I'm potentially going to hit the outside of the glove. If I throw a straight punch, his chin's tucked, I might hit the forehead. If I throw an uppercut and he's tucked his elbows in as he does it, it's hard to find that entry point. So what Deontay Wilder does once he gets you hurt is start windmilling. And that shot that will come over the top, because your hand is protecting your temples, it will actually catch you just above the glove, sort of almost on the top of the head. Well, rather than hit you with a hook, whereby you're going to stay side to side with your guard intact, by hitting you in that sort of area and your head's moving diagonally, it sets you off from your guard. It breaks your construct. And then the follow-up shots start to come, and that's how he starts to get through the guard. In other words, Deontay Wilder just doesn't come out there and start windmilling for no reason. He is actually initially trying to time you, and he's willing to give up rounds, but he's saying eventually I'm going to line you up with that one right hand. So he's a lot better than people give him credit for. But the fact of the matter is he gives up rounds because he's all about that timing. So when a lot of people are sitting there saying Joseph Parker could upset him here, because if he messes up his timing, he's going to be able to move around the ring and outbox him. And you're having a lot of people saying, yeah, but he's going to have to be perfect for 36 minutes. I don't actually think that if Joseph Parker is going to win the fight, he's going to win it via a 12-round decision. I think Joseph Parker's going to look to go at Deontay Wilder. Bear a couple of things in mind. First and foremost, Tyson Fury realized between the first fight and the latter two that to push Wilder back was his best option. Stop the full rotation of that shot. Get him on his heels. Andy Lee, he was part of the team of Fury when he fought Deontay Wilder on a couple of occasions. He's very close friends with Andy Lee too, who is now the trainer of Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker himself is a stablemate of Tyson Fury, and they're friends. What do you think he would have told him? What, you really believe this advice that Joseph Parker's putting out there? Oh, he just told me to stay away from the right hand. Come on now. They would have been talking, the teams would have been talking, they would have been saying to him, listen, after the first fight, I had a realization. When I got knocked down, Fury has spoken about this in the past. When I got knocked down and got up, and Wilder was trying to take me out, I realized I had a lot of success when I went straight at him. And that's when I knew that I would fight the way I was going to fight in the second fight. So don't run from him. Go into him. Push him back. Get in that pocket. Get right on his chest. Even Artur Szpilka had success like that. So can you, Joseph. So I think what you're going to end up seeing is Joseph Parker coming out there being aggressive, fighting fire with fire and seeking to take Deontay Wilder out. And if Wilder's not in a place where he's mentally ready, we've already done a video on this the other day, all the ayahuasca using and all of that, well, who knows whether he could become disrupted here. So from that perspective, he's never been more primed for an upset. Having said all of that, I also believe that a prime Joseph Parker would have had a great chance against a prime Deontay Wilder from a stylistic perspective. I don't think we're seeing a prime Joseph Parker. I think his feet are not what they used to be. Now, when I say a prime Joseph Parker, I'm also talking about the guy who's got the right mindset, because he's always been somebody that's lacked a killer instinct. The talent is there, but how much has he been willing to say, you know what, I'm going to really put myself on the line here and I'm going to be aggressive and seek to take a guy out. If we're talking about Parker, when everything comes together, then he was a real problem. Because he doesn't move in the way that he used to move, I have a feeling that he's not going to be as hard to time. Having said that, don't necessarily look at the Joe Joyce fight, because he landed a lot of big shots on Joe Joyce and he couldn't take him out. Those shots might have affected Deontay Wilder in a very different way to the way they've affected Joe Joyce. But in addition to that, Joe Joyce was landing pummeling shots consistently and chopping down at the tree. As I've already alluded to, Wilder doesn't do that. Wilder's looking to time you with a big shot rather than chopping you down. So there could be a scenario here where Joseph Parker builds up a big lead and he starts to say, right, all I need to do is survive. I've won 8 rounds, say, after the first 9, for argument's sake. Now I need to stay away from Deontay Wilder. Now it's a case of staying safe, continually moving to his left, getting close, smothering, holding him. Bear in mind, Joseph Parker's very physically strong. It's not impossible that that could happen. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. But I think more likely he's going to say to himself, listen, Wilder and AJ is a massive financial fight. If it's anywhere near being close, they're not going to give this fight to me. Even the Fury-Wilder first fight should have gone to Fury and it didn't. I can't leave this to chance. I need to get after Deontay Wilder. So I think he's going to be aggressive, but I think ultimately the foot speed isn't what it used to be. Even if Deontay Wilder looks uncertain early on, he's going to have some scary moments perhaps early on where he'll be losing the fight and he's going to think to himself, I need to find some timing here. I think he will find that right hand and I think he'll end up taking Joseph Parker out. Maybe in the middle to latter rounds, anywhere between rounds 6 and 10, that sort of region there. I also think though that the most likely way that Joseph Parker wins the fight is to get Deontay Wilder early in the first 6, 7 rounds in that sort of zone there before Deontay Wilder finds the opportunity to time him. If Wilder's not what he used to be mentally, physically, and he's not ready for that war, he's getting older, right? And he's trimming down as well. He looked trim for this fight. What is he losing? The older you get, the more you try to trim down, the more you deplete yourself naturally. Is he going to be ready for that sort of trauma? There are question marks there. But I'm still leaning towards Deontay Wilder. Now that brings us on to Anthony Joshua and Otto Wallin. Although the majority of people that I've seen that are picking an upset are going towards Wilder Parker, that happened later on. So the fights were announced, and over the last couple of weeks, people have started to, you started to hear murmurings about maybe Joseph Parker can get an upset. When it came to AJ Wallin, there were a lot of people that were bullish about Wallin being all wrong for AJ, and they were rolling with that pick straight away. A lot of Tyson Fury fans, there were Tyson Fury fans that were coming at me on Twitter who were telling me, I can't believe you're sitting there talking about, you think that AJ's got his mindset back, he's going to get unstuck against Otto Wallin, wait and see. And so they were bullish about this from the beginning. You have to take Wallin seriously because not only are many people adamant, you can see the thought process behind it. It's a very tricky southpaw. And he fights like an amateur, fights tall, technical boxer, and he's brought that into the pro game, and he's been tricky and difficult to get a hold of, and he's very durable. He can take a shot. He's been in with punchers like Gassiev, like Granat earlier in his career. Tyson Fury's a very big man who might not have that one punch knockout power, but he's capable of hurting anybody with a single shot on any given moment. And we know that he can bludgeon guys down too. He's gone the distance with all of these guys. In fact, the only defeat he has on his record is to Tyson Fury. And I know a lot of people have been saying, yeah, but that was all even a fight that maybe he could have won. That fight could have been stopped. If that was stopped, it would have been sort of a win on a technicality. Don't get me wrong, he cut him legitimately. But Fury was able to carry on the fight. So you're really saying that Fury should have just been pulled out because you don't like the look of the cut. The reality is Otto Wallin won about 3 rounds over the course of the 12. At no point were you looking at that fight and thinking Tyson Fury could lose this. It was just an individual moment that caused a lot of superficial skin damage, and it almost or could have cost Tyson Fury had the referee been a different man on the night or had Tyson Fury not been the A side. But you can't over-exaggerate the level of Otto Wallin just because of that. I think he's a good technical fighter. There's no doubt about it. Like I said, he's durable. But here's the thing. When it comes to southpaws, a lot of great fighters, all-time greats, go check out the resumes of your favorite fighters of all time, heavyweights and non-heavyweights alike. You'll see that there are very few high-level southpaws that are on their CVs. By and large, they used to avoid them. They didn't want to know when it came to southpaws because the angles are different, the dynamics are different. We're talking about fighters that really, really struggle with southpaws, even when they are elite-level fighters themselves. So from that perspective, I understand where people's logic is going with this, but I just don't see Wallin as being elite. And here's the thing as well. When you're facing a southpaw, the most difficult aspect is going to be you trying to get to grips with the angles you're not used to, which means until you get used to them, you could give up rounds. You could be at a deficit. So in the first 3 rounds, which is the length of the amateur fights that AJ fought Wallin, that's the region, that's the area where you could potentially see AJ being most perplexed. Maybe even further than that, 6 rounds, 7 rounds, 8 rounds. But over the course of a 12-round fight, the power puncher could start to take a toll on the guy who's looking to pick and poke and win the fight on points. The fact that AJ won the 2 amateur fights makes you wonder, what is Wallin going to do? I know it's a long time ago, but I'm just putting it out there. What could he possibly do that AJ hasn't seen before to make AJ think, wow, I'm perplexed here, I'm bamboozled? Is that really going to be enough, therefore, for Otto Wallin to just be tricky when it hasn't worked for him in the past against Anthony Joshua? Perhaps the best way you can make a case for Wallin is that AJ gasses. He's a big muscular man. There's a lot of lactic acid there. If Otto Wallin can have a higher tempo, use a lot of movement, pick and poke, land backhands to the body. Okay, we've seen Anthony Joshua struggle with shots to the body, in my opinion, in the past, particularly that Andy Ruiz fight. He can tire. Even Kubrat Pulev was having some success there to the body, and AJ began to slow before getting a second wind. Maybe he'll be able to outwork him, and if AJ does tire down the back end of the fight, maybe Otto Wallin can win the majority of the rounds. The problem is there's so much money on the line for AJ versus Wilder. Again, you'd have to imagine that Wallin would probably have to win 8 rounds clearly in order to get the result. He's not won 8 rounds clear. I don't see how he's going to get the decision. So, in my opinion, I think Anthony Joshua, regardless of the judges, is going to have enough to be able to deal with Otto Wallin. Whether he stops him or not, that's another matter. But even if it's AJ points or AJ late stoppage, there are a couple of things that also stand out to me from a psychological perspective. They know that the bag is on the line when it comes to AJ and Wilder. Why did they go and pick Otto Wallin? He knows him so well. They've sparred together after those 2 amateur fights as well, I think as recently as 2016. I think Anthony Joshua feels very confident going into the fight against Otto Wallin. I think he's looking at this and saying, I know this guy. I fought him on a couple of occasions. I've sparred him. And when Tyson Fury did come through the Otto Wallin fight, AJ was interviewed, and I can't remember for the life of me who it was with, but he said something along the lines of, everyone's going on about Tyson Fury. What for? What? Because he beat Otto Wallin when they were comparing the 2 CVs. The way he said it, it was dismissive of Wallin. Now, that might just be PR, right? But to me, it came across as genuine, like he wasn't impressed by Otto. So, I don't know, man. When I look at this from a variety of angles, can he be surprised? Well, he wasn't surprised in the amateurs. He sparred him, so he knows him very well. Is he willing to take a huge risk before a Deontay Wilder fight or 2 that could bring so much money? None of it adds up to Otto Wallin being the sort of guy that's going to upset Anthony Joshua. So my prediction is AJ either late or on points. I'm leaning more towards Joshua getting him late and making a real statement that will help people call for the Deontay Wilder fight even more. But I wouldn't be surprised if the durable Otto Wallin was to hear the final. But just one more thing to add to that. A lot of people talk about, AJ struggles against southpaws. Why? Because he lost to Alexander Usyk. Alexander Usyk is a special fighter. As I said, go look at your favorite heavyweights of the past. Go look at their CVs. Tell me how many world-class southpaws they had on their resume. For all the crowd out there that sit there and say, Alexander Usyk is not a great heavyweight, he's a little bit too small. I'm telling you now, without mentioning names, because people put certain fighters on pedestals as though they're gods, right? They can't handle this idea. Alexander Usyk would have whooped a lot of your legendary heavyweights that you put on a pedestal, simply because the angles were wrong. They would have outboxed them, even these supposed supreme boxers. Trust me, it's no joke to go and fight a southpaw of that quality. How did it go when AJ fought Charles Martin? Don't assume that every southpaw is Alexander Usyk. Moving on from Anthony Joshua, let's talk about Daniel Dubois and Jarrell Miller. This is a fight I'm really intrigued by. You see, Daniel Dubois has all of the weapons necessary to become a top-class fighter. He's young, so there's potential there for growth. The capacity is huge. He's got a brilliant jab. He's got a really powerful backhand. He can shoot an uppercut. He can shoot a hook. And he's got very, very good feet. A lot of people don't give him credit for his feet because he's got a stiff upper back. And that lack of upper body movement, which is a weakness for Daniel Dubois, is often misconstrued as being cumbersome and not being able to move. They're 2 different things. Kell Brook had really good feet, but a really stiff upper body. Look at the Kevin Lorena fight. Even with a leg injury, he was able to stay away from Lorena by moving around the ring, and Lorena is a cruiserweight who should, in theory, be more mobile than a lot of these heavyweights. The problem that Daniel Dubois has, therefore, is not the string to his bow. It's not the tools in his toolbox. It's what happens when the going gets tough. And I'm not trying to undermine Daniel Dubois here, because the Joe Joyce injury was severe, and I've always defended fighters that no longer continue in a fight when they've received a broken orbital bone, whether his name is Daniel Dubois, Billy Joe Saunders, more recently Sonny Edwards. It's a very serious injury that could leave you going blind. And if there's nerve involvement, the pain might be potentially unbearable. Your eyesight can be affected directly too, where you're literally seeing blurred vision, multiple guys standing in front of you. It's a very difficult thing to deal with, especially when you're in there against a heavyweight puncher. So it's not just that fight, but the Lorena fight where he actually showed a lot of balls to come through it after getting dropped because he got caught, then he seemed to fold over his leg. And he got caught, and that's why he went over his leg, right? I'm not suggesting it wasn't a legitimate knockdown, but he injured himself. And at the end of the round, you heard him almost looking for a way out. And Shane McGuigan was adamant, you're going to stay in there, you're going to stay in there. And in the next round, he was able to turn it around and win the fight. If that hadn't happened in the next round and he had to persist like that for 2 or 3 more rounds, would he have continued to listen to Shane? There are question marks. With the Alexander Usyk fight, a lot of people felt he quit. A lot of people felt that things weren't quite tough enough for him not to be able to continue. Now, that's particularly worrying because that's the same fight where Usyk went down under controversial circumstances. Now, I've covered that extensively, and as I suggested, I do think that it was low. But although it was low, it was marginally low, right? Another few inches further up, and he's okay. I don't think he was hitting the testicles, that's for sure. So, as a fighter, if you're Daniel Dubois, aren't you going to take heart from that? Aren't you going to say to yourself, you know what? I've dropped this guy once. I would have softened him to the body now, even if it was an illegal shot, and I hit him in the bladder area, which is low. He wouldn't have fully recovered from that. I've got to keep targeting that body. I've got to keep hanging in there. I've got to keep going. If that's not going to spur you on, if that's not going to encourage you enough, what happens when things are really tough? And if there's one thing that Jarrell Miller can do is make things really tough, coming in at way over 300 pounds, it's like trying to fight an immovable object. It's like a boulder just rolling down towards you and you're trying to push it back up and you just can't. And initially you're strong enough to hold the boulder off, but it gets heavier and heavier and eventually you get crushed. That's exactly how he fights. And he's been in there against guys that are big punchers. Lucas Brown, although he might be washed, not the guy he used to be, power's the last thing to go and he was landing shots consistently on Jarrell Miller, and this is post the drugs test, and he's still coming. Maybe now you're looking at Jarrell Miller and you're thinking, this is a guy who's no longer on PEDs, he's coming in fat, he's not going to have that same volume, and if he does have that same volume with the speed attached to it, he won't be able to maintain it. He's going to be walking onto a lot of shots early on that are big shots from Daniel Dubois. So how do I think this fight plays out? From the perspective of probability, I have to go towards Daniel Dubois, and I'll tell you why I say that. If it was a 12-round fight, I would actually lean towards Jarrell Miller. I think those championship rounds would be very key for him. But in a 10-round fight, I think that there are more paths to victory for Dubois. I think that Dubois has the sharpness and the power to be landing a lot more on Jarrell Miller. So it's a real possibility that in the first 6 rounds, he busts up Miller and he takes him out of there. That's one potential. A second potential path to victory is that he beats him up so much in the first 6 rounds that even if he slows down in the last 4, where Miller's likely to try and come on strong, he won't have enough left in the gas tank. He won't be healthy enough to be able to put it on Dubois enough to win the fight. The third possibility is that Dubois does significantly struggle in the last few rounds, but there's still enough left in the gas tank with his good feet for him to survive. So that's 3 potential paths to victory. The only way Miller wins, in my opinion, is if he grinds him down and wears him out. And that would come late. And in a 10-round fight, I have to lean towards Dubois. Let me know about all the fights that we've spoken about, ladies and gents. What are your opinions on them? Don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.